Yeah. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Voices for Voices show. We are grateful to have you with us. If you've been with us since the beginning, or if this is your first episode, you're really in for a treat with our guest today. We just couldn't be more uh, happy, excited, and grateful for her to spend her time with us. Uh, as the content and topic uh, matches what the organization and what we are trying to help do, not only in the state of Ohio, but in San Diego County, across the state of California, and across the United States. And so we just want to say thank you for being with us and allowing us to come into your homes, to your earbuds, you're watching, you're listening. Thank you so much. So I'm going to start with a bio on our guest to do justice for it. First off, I will say that I came in contact through a news article of a press conference that was held earlier this week ahead of Comic-Con, which is one of the biggest events, uh, definitely in the United States and probably across the world. There's people and tourists and fanatics. They're coming in from all over the United States and all over the world. And with a big event, the district attorney, Summer Stephan of San Diego County, her and a couple advocates had a press conference, and they were sharing earlier this week about how in the past that with large events, you know, good people and maybe some people that uh, aren't as good and have maybe ulterior motives. And when she mentioned and advocates were mentioning about how important human trafficking, sex trafficking is to their county, but especially for this event, but all across the whole entire year. It just happens that this is a huge event, that's Comic-Con going on right now, and that's why this episode is very important to for us to film and to get out at this time. And uh, Summer said, you know, hey, you know, you're not welcome here if this is, you know, some of the activity that you've planned on doing, you may have tried in the past. And so that really intersected with our good friend and human trafficking, sex trafficking survivor, David Solomon, and the work we've been doing the last couple of months, really having him step out and be a light for all survivors of any type of abuse. So we're going to jump into uh, District Attorney Summer Stephan's bio so we can get this little background of her. And so this information comes from the official San Diego County website from her bio. And so I'll be quoting different sections. So at the beginning, you know, in quote, District Attorney Summer Stephan has devoted her life to protecting children and families, providing justice to the most vulnerable, and is a national leader in the fight against human trafficking and sexual exploitation. End quote. That right there in a few words, couple sentences is truly just remarkable uh, that there is a leader of her caliber that is willing to step in and say, as was mentioned in this press conference earlier this week, that you know you're not welcome here in our county and at our events, and that is a very strong message to send. And we think that the model and the way attorney Stephan has grown up in into her role and being a leader and having so many people look up to her for her expertise, her guidance, that maybe there's other counties, other cities, jurisdictions across the United States, and for that matter across the world, they can take maybe a page out of her book. So we want to welcome to the show uh, District Attorney of San Diego County. We have with us from San Diego County, Attorney Summer Stephan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me and for providing a platform for the voices of victims and survivors. Because as you well have learned or know, they often their voice is smothered, it's not heard, and I was delighted to come and join you today because of the fact that you've focused on letting the human voice come out and for stories to come out and stories of courage as well as stories of pain.
Absolutely. And we actually have uh, our, our good friend David Solomon has joined us because he is going through and has gone through this unfortunate bad activity, and he has chosen to be a light. He's chosen to lead, which is really hard to do, being in these situations and the power that some of these individuals have. So David, I'll just give you the floor to just share the thanks and for District Attorney Summer Stephan.
Well, I just wanted to say a personal thank you from me and my family because it's people like you fighting for people that have faced just the scrutiny and every day just face that uphill battle. And I I'm just I'm honored to have you on to speak to our viewers and just to let them hear your voice because it was, I when hearing what you said, I did cry because not a lot of people um, are are voices for people that have been taken or trafficked or missing. And even though I got away, so many have not. And so that's why I'm a voice for those that have not gotten away and also try to be a voice to stop that from ever happening and try to make people aware that this is happening and it's not in Africa or Asia or other countries, it's right here. And Comic Con is such a big moment um, for traffickers, including my own, to use to their advantage. So I'll let you have the floor, but a personal thank you from me and my family.
Thank you so much, David, for those warm thoughts. I hope we can meet in person one day. It's my first interaction with you, but I'm aware that you were willing to share your story. And while your case happened out of state, so uh, I have jurisdictional lines, so I wish I could have helped you then, but I'm trying to amplify the voices of survivors as much as I can, especially pushing for historic legislation for California that it's kind of really crazy to tell you the truth. I know I should use more bigger lawyerly words, but it's a bit unbelievable that this is not already law, that we have to fight. And I've been fighting for the last 10 years to change the law in California so that, buying of human beings for sexual exploitation who are children, 16, 17-year olds that can't consent under the law, but our law makes it a misdemeanor to purchase them like they were a hamburger or a slice of pizza. And what message does that send about the way that we care about people? We're basically saying if you can afford it, go ahead, exploit human beings. So, it's been a long battle, but the voice of survivors from across California that came alongside me and the author Maggie Krell have made such an incredible difference. And we're hopeful. It sits on the governor's desk, but we're hopeful that this time it's going to pass because it passed through the Senate and the Assembly. So keep speaking out, because it eventually the doors start to open and people see the truth and the light, and they see that the old stories about how, you know, people are choosing a life of exploitation, of being, sexually assaulted, and is that's a lie. That's the ugly truth is that being prostituted, being sexually exploited, or labor exploited, that's a crime, and we have to treat it as such.
Yes. And not many people are doing that, especially in this state. Um, I've seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Oh, go
my
ahead,
heart
David.
goes out to you, because that does need to be passed into law.
Yep. Yes. And I'm hopeful, but it's been a 10-year battle, and every time it gets rejected, I think, how could this be? Like, this is so obvious that should be treated um, as seriously as it is, and should be treated as a felony. I mean, we always say we're a nation of laws, that the rule of law matters, but if our laws don't spell out our values in a clear way, then we've kind of lost our way. So, yeah. So I'm very happy to join you to talk about this.
Oh,
Well, we're
absolutely.
on. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Justin.
yeah, we're honored. I was blown away. I was like, this is so amazing to have you, especially this time during this large event. And so I would just I would assume, and I don't like to assume, uh, but having similar uh, ideas, similar beliefs around human trafficking, sex trafficking, that law enforcement has been helpful in that in your tenure, and that's important as well, because of it. I think how the judicial process works, that law enforcement has to do their thing before it gets to your your office, and so if there's not kind of that help and that guidance and that alignment, that can make things really difficult for you.
You're spot on. So, yeah, so I was really just kind of living out my dream that started when I was 12 years old, and I wanted to. I saw a picture in the National Geographic of some girls in North Africa that had like this hopeless, fearful look in their eyes, and they're abused. And I wanted to spend the rest of my life taking that look of hopelessness away from someone's eyes. So I, became a prosecutor and using the law to protect the most vulnerable, and was able to pioneer a really strong model that's become a model for the nation, a sex crimes and human trafficking division that has a team that is an expert. But like you said, just having an expert prosecution team is not enough, because you need law enforcement to be well trained. So I was able, before I became the elected district attorney in 2018, I focused on building the special victims unit, and then began to do trainings and change the laws in California at the very inception of human trafficking laws, which began in 2005. And I'm so proud to say that our Human Trafficking Task Force, which is a 24/7 multi-agency from San Diego Police, Sheriff, from Department of Justice, all the agencies coming together that work 24/7 on recovering victims of human trafficking, they are like the best example you want to see. I tell everybody this, my police officers in San Diego County, they have tears when they recover a human being that's been subjected to this kind of pain. They're real, they're human, they're authentic, they're truly there to protect the victims and to address and, take out I don't mean like take
Yeah,
out, but
yeah,
remove the offenders. So it's a united community, At last Comic-Con, this task force did a very concerted operation that was highly successful. They arrested 14 offenders and they recovered 10 victims, including a 16-year-old who was, being sex trafficked. And they are constantly on the watch. But we need our entire community. We need an educated community because police can't be everywhere. They can't be the eyes and ears. We need our community. So we've built a lot of trust in our community. That was part of the press conference, working with Mr. Shane Harris, who leads an organization focused on justice issues, and Marissa Ogarty and other advocates. Our message is united together, and police department came on board in the press conference to basically say, we don't consider it in San Diego entertainment to buy a human being for sex. It's a crime, and we're going to address it as a crime. And if you come into our town and think that entertainment is, subjecting people to abuse, it's not going to work for us. We're going to take action, and you should expect that someone's going to report it because we're really educated our community, and that maybe there'll be an undercover police officer right next to you and you don't know it. And we're going to take care of business.
that's so important that you mentioned the reporting, uh, because uh, just I don't say with anything, but just coming from corporate America and in different places where there's a hotline you can call and say, hey, if you're seeing this type of abuse or things happening, you can call and there won't be retribution against you. And sometimes those are handled in the proper way, and sometimes they're not. And so to hear you talk about that reporting is huge, because I know it with David, that's one thing we're still battling. We're with his trafficker, and in that situation is it was reported many times. It happened in 2012, and for whatever reason, it actions weren't taken. And so people are like, well, why is it taking this long for you to come back around? And it really was, I don't want to take all the credit because it wasn't all me and it wasn't all Voices for Voices, but it was a big part in giving David an avenue, a way to get his voice out and share it with people that uh, may not, they may think again that these things happen in other areas of the world. They don't happen here in the United States. And even from having a national human trafficking case number, which David has, it's just an incredible. And David, I've said this many times too, but it's because of your continuing, and your mom had passed away, or has passed away, but while she was alive, she was one of your biggest advocates, and was reporting and doing as much as she could. And so I think that is awesome in San Diego County, where there's actually that support of, okay, yeah, if a tip comes in, we'll do our due diligence, and at least that part is missing at different areas across the nation. And I think that's a big model of not just saying, hey, report this tip, but having somebody at your level and having that integration with law enforcement and advocates and authors and survivors is really critical to help the confidence of the constituents in your county and in my county of saying, yeah, like we believe when we're being asked about or when we're asking people to report a certain thing, a certain type of crime, and that is that's just so big. I experienced that in the corporate world where I reported some activity that look at the code of conduct and all that, and ethically, and things weren't really matching up, and there was really no investigation, and like nobody even tried to look at the situation. So I think that it, some people might say, "Oh, that's a small thing," but it's really not because if if the constituents lose that confidence in people like you and your team and your fellow county officials, then uh, that's a hard thing to really get past. Of like, well, you know what? They tell me to call or they tell me to report. I report, and nobody even asks for my side. Now, whether it can be prosecuted with the different, beyond the reasonable doubt, that's one side of things. But there's so many people that they feel that they're not even being heard, and so thank you for sharing that bit of that reporting because it seems small and minor, uh, but the fact that that's the part and you're advocating for that, if you see something, if something it looks out of the ordinary, if go ahead and report that, and then the county will look at it, and it may go forward, it may not, but at least there are advocates that, as you mentioned, it, law enforcement, having tears, when they're, recovering and safely uh, bringing somebody back home from the unfortunate trafficking events, and that's really big. And this is it's a big, with Epstein and all these things. I mean, it's truly a national issue, and that's that's just huge to have you do what you're doing and you've been doing it for 10 years and it's not a fast process, but you have that perseverance. Like you're like, yep, this is just an obstacle. I'm gonna keep doing this because this is what's right.
That's right, and you put it in such real terms that it's so easy to lose trust, when you tell people to do something and then you don't respond. One of the things that I think is part of the model of San Diego is even if we can't go forward with a case because the proof isn't beyond a reasonable doubt, we make every attempt to personally our team meet with the victim to explain that their report still matters. And the reason it matters is we've had many cases where that report helps build the beginnings of a case so that when more evidence develops, or God forbid, if there's another victim, which sadly these predators usually have additional victims, we can put all the pieces together and build a strong case. And we've done that. So they don't feel like they weren't heard or they're not been believed, but explaining the system that we have, which is a good system, and it's one where sometimes the guilty go free because of the proof beyond reasonable doubt, but we're able to validate their courage, and that's super important, and provide victim services in terms of trauma, which many of our victims need a lot of psychological trauma help and mental health supports and other things after what they experienced. We had a very successful operation this past year where we recovered 16 victims,
Mm.
and this is in San Diego. I mean, this is not in a foreign country, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
And eight of them were kids, the youngest, a
Oh,
13-year-old.
Mm.
And this 13-year-old, initially, when she was recovered, she did not want to be recovered because the abusers psychologically manipulate the victims into believing this is their choice. This is it's a formula of psychological kidnap is what I've termed. Which is sometimes stronger than kidnapping somebody forcefully and putting them in the back of the car. It's the psychological deception and kidnap that keeps people in their victimization because they don't think they can escape or that anyone will believe them. And so it took a while for this kiddo, after she was safely with her grandmother, to start to process her trauma and, being essentially sexually assaulted, raped by so many men that bought her, for the benefit of the trafficker. And the people that we want to get is not just the trafficker, but those people that thought it's okay for money to abuse this child. And this, of course, like you mentioned, Epstein, and we have to remind the public that the face of the predator is not a stereotype. It's not what you might think. It's like could be your neighbor, your person who's a religious figure, or they're somebody that looks like they could do no wrong, or obviously someone rich and powerful. Yeah, unfortunately, there is no stereotype for what a trafficker looks like or what a exploiter, a criminal buyer looks like. So we need to really be alert more to detect the victims and not necessarily to stereotype what the offender will look like. So what I always explain to the public is you're probably not going to see bruises, you're not going to see chains. You'll have to look for the subtle signs. Is the victim speaking for themselves, or is the person speaking for them because they don't want them to answer the question the wrong way that will lead to detection? Do they even know what day of the week it is? It's incredible how many victims I've met when we first recovered them. Their days of abuse all roll together. They don't know what day of the week it is. Sometimes they don't know what city they're in, especially like for big events like Comic-Con. They're being moved from city to city wherever there's a big event where there could be a lot of profit to be made and a lot of potential victim pools and potential buyers. That's where they're going. So it's not that the Comic-Con is a bad event. It's a wonderful creative event, nor is a baseball game or a football game. It's just the fact that traffickers and abusers are looking for opportunity, and big events provide that opportunity.
And one of the big things with Comic-Con, if I may, because I'm a writer, um, is costumes. So
Right.
they can hide behind literal masks and they can make you go missing. And that's not to scare anyone. It's just a reality that it's so dangerous because they feed on that idea that, oh, I can hide in plain sight and you're going to think I'm a friend of your favorite comic character, your favorite hero, and trust me. And also, what you got into there, like with me, was grooming, and you touched on it beautifully. I was 11 when I met my captor, and I had no idea, and I didn't want to, even after being taken out of the country over the border and, all the things, I still wanted to go back to him. And that shows you the grooming that these people do. And no one understands that. They think, oh, well, you get away and it's over. No, no, no. That's not it. And the abuse, like not knowing what time it is or day it is, I can totally relate to that. That was so beautifully said. And Comic Con is not a bad event, but any big event presents danger with people that have minds of um, these activities. They sense money and they sense a human being as just a paycheck.
Yeah, that's really well said, and thank you for supporting my analysis of, of the many years, 2 decades of fighting this and having prosecuted my own cases in this realm. The grooming is so critical because it's psychological brainwashing. And so the captor doesn't have to even watch the victim anymore. The victim is trapped by their own, um, you know, deranged picture that has been put in their head through this really diabolical psychological grooming. Like I mentioned, our 13-year-old, it took her a long time. One night she started texting our investigator, and she basically said, Katie, I'm having these nightmares. The flashbacks are coming back, because she was just starting to realize what had happened to her. While she was in it, she didn't see it. She thought that this is normal. This is like what love looks like. And the predators are really, we had this very interesting case that really we learned, our whole task force learned a lot from. This was an adult victim. And, we have to remember that adult victims are still victims. And for the most part, they started in being exploited as children. And then naturally, they didn't suddenly switch into being free human beings at 18. And we couldn't tell what was going on. She had a phone. She looked like she was running her own activity, but this gal was getting skinnier and skinnier. She looked so in need of help, but she refused to tell us what was happening until we went up on a wire, which took a lot of work, but we didn't want this gal to die on us. And we could hear now what was happening. And what was happening was her trafficker was threatening her with the one thing that she loved. It was her dog. He would take her dog when she didn't meet the quota
Sorry
and
that I'm cutting and we got like 20 seconds left, but
put her dog and would threaten her that the dog would be euthanized if she didn't continue. So these are the things that our victims go through. We have to continue fighting for a free society with dignity and safety for every child and every human being.
absolutely. Thank you so much. This